I'm Alex Rogeo for MoparMax magazine, and I'm here today with Mopar Larry. Now, Larry has been in our magazine before. We did a feature on his 66 Coronet, and today we're going to talk a little bit about his awesome looking 68 GTX. Can you tell me about how you went from the Coronet to this car?
Well, Alex, I actually have a car bucket list, believe it or not. On that bucket list, there were two cars. One would be a 4-speed HEMI car, which this is. The other one is a straight axle gasser style type car. I was talking to a person in North Carolina about a gasser car that I was going to trade my Coronet for. But being so far distance-wise, North Carolina, California, that deal didn't pan out. So I attend a show every year in June in Pismo Beach. I'm there last year with the Coronet, and two of my friends were there with me. And Rick, one of my friends, introduced me to this guy named Rodney. And Rodney started talking about this GTX he has for sale. I wasn't looking for a car to buy. Short conversation was that I'm trading the Coronet. You trade the Coronet? And he says, for what? So I explained to that this 41 Dodge I was looking at. And he goes, well, I have this 68 GTX. He took his phone out, showed me pictures of the GTX. Looks very nice, the blue, the interior. And it's a 440 car, 4-speed car. Well, at that point, the story goes back to 1970. When I was 20 years old, I stood in a dealership looking at a brand new HEMI 4-speed Roadrunner. And the price tag on that car was $3,876 and some change. To this day, I remember that. So 45 years later, I'm thinking like, if I trade the Coronet for the GTX, I'll build my own 4-speed HEMI. Not a Roadrunner, but a GTX. So, met with Rodney in July of last year. We did do the trade. We sold the 440 engine to a guy down in San Diego, and he's using that engine for another car he's doing. And I built a 528 cubic inch HEMI, and it's a 4-speed car. And it's just a blast to drive. It's an absolute blast.
So how much power did it make? I think you had it on the engine dyno, that's correct, right?
I did. I started the project with building a street HEMI. The short block was from one guy, the intake was from another friend of mine. I used Edelbrock cylinder heads, one of the first that we believe on the West Coast that were used for a home project, as it were. And to answer your question, it made 712 horsepower at 6,800 RPM. So I was very pleased with it, more than I was looking for being a street build, with the assistance of Bob Mazzolini Racing, who supplied a lot of the parts. And a big thank you to Steve Patton in Huntington Beach, who assembled the engine, and Lee Tracy also helped, and my brother, Chuck. And Rick, of course, the guy who introduced me to Rodney at Pismo Beach, took the Coronet to Lemoore, California. That's where the car is from.
So what kind of transmission rear end setup did you decide on?
Okay, it had the 4-speed in the car, and it's not an 18 spline HEMI 4-speed, it's a 23 spline. It's been refurbished by Westminster Transmission, and the rear end is an 8 3/4 Mopar rear end with 355 gears and a sure grip. And the combination works real well. I can cruise at about 70 miles an hour at about 3,000 RPM. For the local cruises I go in car shows, it works real well. Pismo Beach, Yuma, those shows, I do trailer the car.
So it drives well, it has a lot of power, it looks amazing. Are you going to keep the car?
Well, boy, that's a good question. Since I said earlier I have this bucket list, more than likely it took 45 years for me to get this car. So it's probably the last one I'm going to have. But if somebody has to have it, or I see the right deal on a gasser that I like, I could possibly have one more. But more than likely, to answer your question, it's probably my last one.
Larry, I want to thank you very much for sharing your gorgeous GTX with us. It's been a pleasure, and I'm so glad that you finally got your car after so long.
Well, thank you, Alex. It was a pleasure doing the interview with you today. And if you're on the streets of Southern California, look for me, because I'm out there.
I'll be sure to do that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
You too.